But I think the development of full artificial intelligence will spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
It was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
So you said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
What's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. That's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 6,
3, 2, 9, 7.
Doesn't have your best interest in mind. The government is self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness.
Good evening. Welcome to the first broadcast of Troubled Minds Radio. I am your host, Michael Strange. I'm here with my co-host, Frank Pierce. And we'd like to say hello to all of you who might also have troubled minds. If you'd like to be part of the show, we welcome your input and comments. The number to call is 702-957-1037. One more time, if you'd like to call and be part of the show, this is live. This is a live show. 702-957-1037. Give us a call. We'll put you on the broadcast. We'll talk about aliens. We'll talk about conspiracy. We'll talk about all the good things worth talking about. So, basically, Frank and I have been talking about how we're just concerned citizens and how we'd like to do some things that could possibly change the world. And we don't have the ability to do that without, the internet, without crowdsourcing, without Facebook, without YouTube, without those types of things. So we just like to provide a stable voice to an interested community. And we're hoping that you guys are that interested community. So the growing sentiment that I seem to think is that the things in the world, they just aren't right. And so I think Troubled Minds is a great way to put it. Frank Pierce, anything to add there?
That's a good point, Mike. We can ask questions to anyone. We can email an expert about building domes on the moon. We can email an expert about government conspiracies. Answers is ask questions. It's as simple as that.
There you go. So our entire idea here is that we're not here to provide answers. I think the answers are pretty slippery. But we are here to ask those questions. And the stuff that we're going to talk about specifically, it's going to be, of course, aliens. This page is little green men, little greenish men. So we're definitely going to talk about aliens, all things UFO. We're going to talk about the shadowy inner workings of the deep state, also called or known as parapolitics. Obviously cryptozoology and all the rest of the good fun stuff that doesn't get enough coverage in the mainstream media. So what we're going to do is, if you guys, this is all based on user interest. If you guys are interested, we're going to keep doing shows, and we'll kind of take the news as it comes and try and frame it one way or the other, so that you guys can see some of the good stuff, some of the bad stuff, and we can talk about it. Once again, if you guys would like to call in, this is a live broadcast. So 702-957-1037. Give us a call, and we'll put you on the air, and we'll talk about these things. So specifically, we're going to source our information, obviously, from the internet. That's the easiest way. But we're hoping eventually to contact some experts in the field and retrieve secret documents from the government using the FOIA, which is the Freedom of Information. What is that? FOIA? Help me out there. Freedom.
Yeah, the FOIA request, Freedom of the Information Act request. So you can get documents on anything as long as there's a legitimate public interest deemed.
There you go. And so that's what I meant to say. Thanks there, Frank. And basically, if we can put together a narrative that can engage the troubled minds. So there we go. We actually chose this particular broadcast method for a few reasons, but mostly I think it's important to be able to take live calls. If you guys are interested, call in one more time. The number here is 702-957-1037. We will be taking phone calls, so if you guys would like to be on the broadcast, give us a call. We'll get you on. So that's probably the most important thing. Kind of call it like a crowdsourcing type of live show. Let's say maybe trolling the waters for any actual non-trolls. I don't know. What do you think, Frank? Are there any non-trolls left on the internet?
I'm sure there are. I expect to get some troll calls, but I expect to have people out there with good information, like even things they wouldn't think are good information. Like, I was thinking the other day, there's a conspiracy theory going around where Walmarts are meant to serve as FEMA camps, and there's tunnels connecting them under the earth and so on and so forth. So even someone like a Walmart employee who's been in the basement of a Walmart and can describe what it looks like and can think if it could be repurposed for another use, hey, that's good information. We'd love to talk to you.
Absolutely. So even if you don't think you have good information, then give us a call. Opinions are good, and we'd like to know how we're doing. If you guys are interested in the show, any feedback is good feedback. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, I think a good way to kick the show off is to actually talk about some conspiracy theory. Now, over the course of history, people have been playing dirty, underhanded tricks on each other, literally since people had the power of thought. So none of this is new. But what we'd like to do is explore the meaning of what an actual conspiracy theory is, kind of in terms of a modern framework and a historical framework. So we picked out a couple theories here that we can kind of pick through and talk about, and maybe you've heard of some of these. What we want to do is talk about if they're actually provable now. So these were conspiracy theories at the time, but now that history has kind of proven it one way or the other, was it actual tinfoil hat type stuff, or was the conspiracy crowd vindicated through history, documents, and reporting, etc.? So with that said, let's get started on some of these conspiracy theories. Before we do that, one more time, if you want to call in and be part of the show, this is a live broadcast. If you call in, we can put you on the show. If you call in and you don't want to miss the show and you're on hold, it won't play elevator music. It should play the podcast on your phone. So go ahead and call 702-957-1037. One more time, 702-957-1037. All right, let's kick this off with a conspiracy theory. What do you say there, Frank?
Yeah, let's do it. And as you said, conspiracies aren't new. They've been going on forever, since the dawn of civilization. And I think they're always going to continue happening. Like, they'll never go away. As long as people desire political power or desire to suppress citizens, you'll have a conspiracy, one way or the other. And so one of the most famous conspiracies I think we can start out with, and it really did happen at the dawn of civilization, is the assassination of Julius Caesar. So let's give some backstory on that and talk about it. What do you think?
Fire away, buddy.
Okay, so yeah, let's get a little history into Julius Caesar. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's a very famous character in Shakespeare's plays, but he was assassinated as the result of conspiracy because he was gaining too much political power. So think of today. I'm sure you can find parallels there. So Caesar and his background. So before Caesar, Gaul, which was modern-day France and Germany and parts of northern Italy, was basically under complete barbarian control. They would raid down into Roman territory on the Italian peninsula, and Rome was having a big problem with it. And after Caesar finished conquering Gaul, he went up there, he took it over. He made huge strides towards expanding the wealth and the respect of the Roman Republic, and he prevented those barbarians from raiding the Italian peninsula. So I think I have a little stat here about that war. Basically, they say that during the Gallic Wars, Caesar fought against 3 million men. He killed 1 million of them. He enslaved another million of them. He subjugated over 300 tribes, and he destroyed 800 cities. So he was doing serious work. And that was a problem for his political opponents. You know, if you get too popular on one side, your opponents don't want to cede that power to you. So they start to plot against you. They start to find a way to your rights and what you can really do. That's what happened to Caesar. Just like today, just like in the elections we've seen recently, plotting against each other. So again, Caesar was very popular amongst the people, but his elites, high-born, noble senatorial opponents didn't really appreciate him. They wanted to get rid of him. And they did this.
One sec.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I don't know if you saw the comment there. Richie Storm commented, you can say the same thing about JFK. Like, that's a pretty pertinent parallel there. Like, exactly all the things you just said. Very popular with the people. A lot of the elite class that actually was working around him and with him didn't like what he did. They didn't like his policies. Like, that's an entire whole other can of worms to get into, but just wanted to drop that in real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this happened 2,000 years ago, and as you mentioned, we're seeing parallels even today. So these things have been going on forever, and they always will. Anyway, so Caesar conquered Gaul. He was immensely popular, and his political opponents didn't like that. So he wanted to run again. His term as consul, which was like a Roman governorship, was expiring. He wanted to run again and get reelected. That way he could give all his veterans land in Italy. He wanted to give them voting rights. And some of the members in Gaul, the Celtic tribes he had conquered, they wanted to get Roman citizenship, so they wouldn't be slaves anymore. They would be real Romans. And with all these people, his veterans and all these new people he's bringing into the Republic, they were all votes for him, right? So the more people he brought in, the more votes he would get, the more powerful he would get. And his opponents didn't like that at all. So what happened is that he tried to run again for Senate, but there were a couple of problems with that. The first is that he had broken, let's be honest, he had broken a few laws.
A few?
He was suspected of committing war crimes here or there, but you have to understand this is 2,000 years ago. That kind of thing happened all the time.
Still does.
And the problem is, it still does. As governor, he was immune from prosecution. So anything he did as governor, conquering the Gallic tribes, the Celtic tribes in Gaul, they weren't going to prosecute him for it. There was no problem. But as soon as he stepped down from governor or lost his position, then his political opponents could come to him and say, hey, you've been doing some bad stuff here. Let's throw you in jail. Let's exile you. Let's execute you. And that's what they were trying to do. That was their strategy. So Caesar wanted to come back to Rome and run an election, but they wouldn't let him do that. They kept vetoing efforts. His supporters raised a bill in the Senate that said he could stand in absence. So he was up in Gaul and the Senate was down in Italy. But his opponents didn't like that at all. So in the lead up to the election, they kept trying to strip the power, but his supporters in the Senate kept vetoing those bills that stripped Caesar of his power. And eventually, they started raising an army to defend against Caesar because he had all these legions under his control, right? And again, they kept trying to strip him of power. He just wanted to return to get voted in as consul. He would definitely win, but his opponents did not like that one bit.
Who does?
So that, yeah, no one does. So they tried to mediate his disputes. They tried to disarm him, very similar to what you're seeing today. They tried to say, if you allow your legions to go, if you disband them, we'll let you come back to Rome. You can stand for election. But again, he was having none of that. He knew what would happen. They would prosecute him as soon as he came back. And finally, remember, at this point, all he wants to do is come back to Rome and run for election. And his opponents are threatening prosecution. They're threatening imprisonment. They want to get rid of him. So finally, the Senate passed the Senatus Consultum Ultimum. And that sounds pretty. It was a bill, basically, that couldn't be vetoed by his supporters. And it basically declared martial law in Rome. So what would you do in that situation? You're trying to come back. You're very popular with the people, but this noble elite class of people don't want you to run. What can you do? What would you do?
Well, if I've got the army backing me, I think we have a conversation. But if you don't, I think it's a completely different conversation. Another interesting parallel, real quick, is I think that just happened in the Russian election. So Vladimir Putin actually had a actual challenger that was popular with the people. I don't recall his name right now, so bad Mike for being a bad radio show guy. But this has happened recently, within the past 6 or 8 months. And so first he was disallowed to run against Mr. Putin, of course. And then after that, he was actually imprisoned and charged with some other crime, as if just disqualifying him wasn't enough. So anyway, that's something we can touch on later. But yeah, so what do you do? So in that type of situation, you've got the army at your back. You're popular with the people, but the people with the money, the people in the Senate, the people that are supposed to be working with you, they don't support you. So what can you do?
So he did exactly what you expect. He took his legions. He marched down the Italian peninsula. He conquered the entire place. He marched west to Spain. He conquered the Roman provinces there. Then he went down to Egypt and Africa and took that over too. And then he went east to Greece, took that over to conquer the entire Roman Empire in no time at all.
And so,
and that leads.
When was this? What was the date approximate before the final Caesar end, which we're leading up to here? Was this like within the year?
This was, I think, 2 or 3 years before his end.
Okay.
So he did make it. He did make it back to Rome. He had to, he was either an enemy of the Republic, and he didn't want that, or he had to conquer the place because the noble elite, the deep state, if you will, they wouldn't let him back in. So he eventually did take over. He conquered the whole place, and he went to dictator. Now, interestingly enough, even though he was appointed dictator, his action as dictator was to allow himself to run for election, and then he rescinded his dictatorship. So I think that right there really points to the fact that all this guy wanted to do is make the Roman Empire great, and rescinding his dictatorship was a good move. He didn't want to be a dictator forever.
And
now, eventually, he runs around, he takes over the rest, he crushes all his opposition, and then the Senate actually made him a dictator. So they kept offering him kingship, actually. And the remnants of his political opponents really didn't like that. So it's called the Liberatores formed. And around 40 influential politicians all got together and they planned how to assassinate Caesar, how to get rid of him. They couldn't do it militarily. They couldn't do it politically. So they were left with it. They met several times. They discussed several plots. They wanted to ambush him on his favorite walking route. They wanted to push him off a bridge. and they wanted to stab him when he was running for election. But eventually, a plan. Basically, they called a meeting in the Senate. All his conspirators surrounded him, and they stabbed him to death. So I think it was said that 60 or more men participated in the assassination, and he was stabbed.
And it was kind of done like the mafia would, right, or like a common street gang. So to make sure that the blood was on everybody's hands, they made sure that everybody actually stabbed him. So somebody couldn't stand off on the side, right? Yeah. Because
60 of the senators were involved, they pardoned themselves afterwards. Because they certainly couldn't all be convicted of crimes, so none of them were convicted of crimes.
Huh. That sounds pretty similar to what's still going on. Reminder.
You could drive this with what you have today.
Yeah, right. Quick reminder, if anybody's out there listening, this is a live show. You can call in, be on the broadcast with us. The phone number, 702-957-1037. I've got it pinned in chat down there. We are reading your chat if you want to chat in there as well. So I've got Todd Futches. It sounds like a troll, like you want me to say a bad word on a live stream, but I'm going to go with just mispronouncing your name. The elections are a joke. That's exactly right. Like, so not only are we talking Caesar's time, obviously, the vote's always rigged, right? One way or another, they find a way to rig it. This Russian Facebook bit or what have you. There's always one way or another where somebody somewhere along the line is trying to dirty up the voting rolls. You know? Yeah.
So this kind of stuff was happening 2,000 years ago. Think about that. 2,000 years ago, that's same type of thing that's happening then is happening today. That's unbelievable. Well, or really believable. It's up to you.
Yeah. Exactly. And so 2,000 years ago, we're talking conspiracy theories, and I think the interesting one about this particular thing, even though it's super famous, it still kind of shows you, and some JFK parallel again, that it doesn't matter how high you go in power, right? Like these people are the most powerful people in the world. JFK was at the time he was assassinated, and Julius Caesar as well. So nobody's actually immune from these type of conspiracies. It doesn't matter.
And to think about it this way too, if you can assassinate what the world calls the greatest general to ever live, you can assassinate anyone. Like people talk about being assassinated for leaking DNC documents. He was just a lowly DNC analyst. He had no power. But if you can assassinate JFK, if you can assassinate Caesar, you can definitely assassinate Seth Rich.
You didn't just go all Seth Rich on me, did you? You just went off the rails and show number one. We just went Seth Rich. Okay, we're not going to talk about Seth Rich tonight. But yeah, interesting because if you can get Caesar, you can get JFK. That means you can get anybody, literally anybody. So yeah, I see a couple guys listening. I don't know exactly how many are out there, but if you want to be on the show, give us a call, 702-957-1037. There's like a quick call screen process where you just say your name and the topic you want to talk about, and we'll put you on the show. All right, so anything else to add there, Frank, for the Julius Caesar?
It's just important to note that these things have been happening for such a long time. So if people say there are no conspiracy theories or they never happen, bullshit. Pardon my language. They've been happening since the dawn of civilization, literally. So don't discount yourself if you think you've noticed something. Think about things, ask questions, get answers, and determine things for yourself.
There you go. A couple more comments. We got Todd again, and so starts the idea of corporations. There you go, like a different sort of tribalism. I concur. And then Richie Storm and big pharma companies too. Here we go. Same thing, right? Different conspiracies, but same sort of ideas. All right, so Julius Caesar, right? 2,000 years ago. We're going to jump a little further in time, closer to where we're at. And we're going to talk about, what do I got here? Let's see. Let's pull this one up. Okay, so if anybody has ever heard of the Church Committee, this was a something in the Senate that happened in 1975. So with during the Cold War, you have all kinds of radio signals going on. You've got telephones. This is way pre-internet, so we don't really have computers yet. But the surveillance state was in full effect even then. 1975. I can't even count that high, how many years ago that was. But it was happening. So right here off the Wikipedia real quick. By the early years of the 70s, a series of troubling revelations had appeared in the press concerning intelligence activities. First came the revelations by Army intelligence officer Christopher Pyle in January 1970 of the U.S. Army's spying on the civilian population. Now, if anybody's familiar with the Fourth Amendment, the First Amendment, your right to not be subjected to unreasonable search and seizures, etc. That includes being spied upon. And we're talking like in the 70s when we just had telephones, right? like what we have. So there were telephones, there was actual shortwave radio, and we had telegraph. Am I missing anything? Like it was pretty low tech, but they had it on such a level of lockdown that the reports were alarming Congress, the United States Congress, of course, and they ended up having a hearing about it, and that's called the Church Committee, and it was a committee chaired by Idaho Senator Frank Church. Okay, and yeah, so they went through and they dug through a bunch of stuff, and there's some frightening things that came out of this in low-tech surveillance, and some of it is such that it was on such a lockdown that it well, here, I'll play the clip. This is Frank Church himself, and he's talking about specifically how the surveillance state has the power to become so overreaching that we lose everything. It's a interesting clip. Here we go.
Senator, let me follow up by asking, do you think that the CIA and military intelligence agencies and the FBI have used the emergency provisions, both in law and by emergency agency, the Federal Preparedness Agency it's called now, to have contingency plans which threaten the liberty of American citizens?
Mr. Rowan, in due course, the committee will pass judgment on those questions. I'm not going to pre-guess the committee or prematurely attempt to pass judgment on this program. But let me tell you this. In the need to develop a capacity to know what potential enemies are doing, the United States government has perfected a technological capability that enables us to monitor the messages that go through the air. These messages are between ships at sea. They could be between units, military units in the field. We have a very extensive capability of intercepting messages wherever they may be in the airwaves. Now, that is necessary and important to the United States as we look abroad at enemies or potential enemies. We must know. At the same time, that capability at any time could be turned around on the American people. And no American would have any privacy left, such is the capability to monitor everything, telephone conversations, telegrams, it doesn't matter. There would be no place to hide if this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country. The technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back, because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know. Such is the capability of this technology. Now, why is this investigation important? I'll tell you why. Because I don't want to see this country ever go across the bridge. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision so that we never cross over that abyss. That's the abyss from which there is no return.
There you go. And the clip. And I think it's a little scary how gloom and doom this guy's talking. At the very end, did you hear that? So that we never cross over that abyss.
It sounds like he's talking about what's happening today. Like we've crossed that abyss. We've gone over it. Like look at those Snowden revelations. They have all the data they could ever need. Where was he? Where were these people stopping that the entire time? They just kept going. They just kept developing that technology.
Exactly right. And so another interesting bit there is that he says it's a point of no return. Like once you cross that threshold, there's no going back ever. It's like Pandora's box. Once you open it, you'll never be able to put it back in. And like it's arguable that we've already crossed that threshold. A little bit disturbing.
Look at the Patriot Act. They keep renewing it and expanding it and expanding it. That's what he's talking about.
Exactly right. And so some of the revelations that came out of this is the Church Committee again, going back to 1975, and that was the senator actually talking about it in the audio clip there. But what some of the things that came out of the investigation is that we found out that they were trying to actually assassinate Fidel Castro of Cuban dictator fame. Another one that came out of it was they were closely monitoring, and this has been played in pop culture, movies, and whatever else, but they were closely monitoring Martin Luther King Jr., right? And so there's still questions about his assassination and why they were so interested, right? He kind of held like a Caesar, like a JFK. He had the power of the people behind him, and I think that's telling. That should teach us today. And part of why we're doing this is because when the people get together behind a particular thing, there's no way to stop them, right? If you can galvanize the power of the people, they can have their way. And that's the largest fear of our government.
That's what a democracy is supposed to be. It doesn't look like we have one anymore.
Absolutely not. Quick reminder, this is live. If you guys want to call in, we'd love to have you on the show. 702-957-1037. We're just Frank and Mike talking about conspiracy theories. So if you want to call in and give us your 2 cents, we'd love to hear from you. Got a few lines open, so give us a call. All right, so we've done Julius Caesar, we've done the Church Committee. What else we got there, Frank?
Yeah, here's another quite humorous conspiracy that went on during that same era, the 1960s, dealing with surveillance. It's called Operation Acoustic Kitty. Now, that sounds a bit odd because it is a bit odd, but let's just give some background. So, 1960s, height of the Cold War. JFK said during that time, in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. So it's hour of maximum danger. They really thought the world was going to end. That was the prevailing theme during that time. And you had things like the Cuban Missile Crisis. You had nuclear-armed Soviet submarines off of Cuba. You had Soviets experimenting with intercontinental ballistic missile technology, and there were real worries about putting nuclear warheads on them. And children, of course, were taught to duck and cover in schools to save themselves if there was nuclear warfare. So there was a lot of paranoia, a lot of suspicion, a lot of real troubling stuff going on during that time. And what they really needed, because it was a Cold War, of course, it wasn't a hot war, there was no fighting. They needed information. They needed to know the technological capabilities of their enemies. They needed to know how many missiles they had, where they had them, what their plans were, so they needed to spy on people, right? And the problem with using a conventional spy is that a spy can be caught. A spy can be made to talk. So the CIA came up with a different means of spying, and this is incredibly interesting. It's almost unbelievable. And that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that some of these conspiracies are crazy. They are unbelievable, but they are true. So in the 1960s, the CIA spent $20 million on Operation Acoustic Kitty. And the idea was simple. They take a regular cat, so a house cat, they cut it open, they put a microphone in its ear, a battery in its chest, and under the skin, along the back and up the tail, they install an antenna. And then they sew the cat back together. And the idea was that using a cat, they could turn it into a mobile listening device. Can you believe that? I'm serious. $20 million spent on a project to turn a house cat into a mobile, intelligent listening device. This really happened.
That's pretty gold. First, a couple thoughts. That's a lot of money. I don't know. I've owned cats. Anybody who's owned a cat could probably tell you that you can't make a cat do anything a cat doesn't want to do. So you say go north, and the cat's going to go south. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's a little frightening. The lengths they'll go to, right?
It's pretty interesting because one of the things they noted was that when the cat got distracted or hungry, it would just wander around. It wouldn't go where they told it to. And they had trained it to a small extent. So they mentioned they did a surgery on the cat to reduce its feelings of hunger, and that sounds kind of sinister, to be frank. Anyway, so what they wanted to do is take this cat, bring it outside the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C., and have the cat walk inside the Soviet embassy and then listen in on all these secret conversations. Like, I can't even believe this. This actually happened. And the funny thing is, the first time they did a test, they took the cat in a van over to a public park. They had a couple of their agents sitting in the park, to see if they could record the conversation with the cat. So they let the cat out of the van. The cat walked into the street, and the cat got hit by a taxi cab and died. $20 million down the drain like that. This is real. This happened.
Because the cat went south instead of north.
It wandered into traffic and died. So the most technologically advanced cat ever created. They were hoping to save the world with the information from the Soviet embassy, and it walked into traffic and died.
That's crazy. And yeah, shows you the level of go they're willing to get to try and make things happen. Wow. Okay. So
now I did some digging.
Okay.
So back in the 1960s, computers were the size of rooms, right? There was no miniaturization technology. Microphones and recording devices and batteries were all quite large, and that's why they had to use a cat. A cat's big; it could support that. But looking around, I found some interesting things. So commercial available batteries have been miniaturized to less than 1/8 of an inch squared, so the size of a couple of grains of rice. Same thing for microphones. They've reduced them to about the size of a single grain of rice. And as well, transmitters have been developed on even smaller scales than that. So in the 1960s, they were doing all this stuff. And now today, they've miniaturized that technology down even more. So they could fit all this stuff on a bird. That bird you see outside your window chirping in the morning looks happy. It could be spying on you. There's no reason to believe it's not true. I'm serious. I'm deadly serious. They did this to a cat. They could do it to a bird.
I'm not laughing at you.
That fly.
I'm laughing at
that fly buzzing in the window. They could do it to that too.
So has
they could install. Go ahead.
Has that technology actually been trimmed down to where it could fit on an insect at this point?
Absolutely. I've seen the documents. I've looked on the internet, and they've miniaturized it down to the point where they could fit it on a housefly. They could fit it on a small bird. They could fit it on a cockroach. Put it in your house. It could listen to you, broadcast everything back.
Which is funny that they don't even need that anymore, because they just sell you a Google Home or like an Alexa, and people happily buy the spyware and put it in their living room.
Yeah, maybe they do. Maybe that's the new way of doing things, is they want to sell you that Amazon Alexa device and it can listen to everything for you. But you never know if they have to get into another embassy or if they have to get into someone's house who doesn't have this kind of listening technology already in place. They could send in a cockroach.
Yeah, for sure. The reported final headquarters of Osama bin Laden comes to mind, when he didn't have any internet or telephone or anything going on, trying to avoid the NSA spy state. But apparently they were all kinds of technology that they were able to locate him, or how many people were in the building through like from a mile away, like audio acoustics and all kinds of other like crazy stuff. So, wow. But that there certainly seems like it would something that would work for that type of situation, where somebody's so paranoid that they're so remote that they have no connections to the outside world, that you just send a fly buzzing in there and nobody's safe. No amount of paranoia, no amount of tinfoil hat could keep you away from the government if the government wants to get you. Pretty crazy.
And that's, again, going back to the Fourth Amendment that you were talking about. Like, we have no rights anymore. If it's not Amazon's Alexa listening to us, if it's not acoustic microphones or satellites looking down from on above, it's birds implanted with listening devices. There's nothing we can do.
Right. Absolutely. Todd and Richie, thanks for sticking with us. I see you there talking about Enemy of the State and some of the other stuff. They've made robot insects already. I haven't seen any literature for that, but they try and keep it secret. I believe it, though. I literally believe it's happening. One more time. Remember, we're a live show, guys. You can give us a call. Phone number here is 702-957-1037. Give us a call. We'll put you on the show. We can talk about this stuff. We'll pipe you right in, and you can talk about robotic insects or Enemy of the State. We'd love to have you. All right. Anything else to add there with your Operation Kitty?
I was just going to say, think about that conspiracy theory. That is absolutely insane. And so when people talk about conspiracy theorists as being insane, well, there's proof. Crazy things are happening all the time. So you shouldn't be discouraged to ask questions. You shouldn't be discouraged to think about things, because who in their right mind would believe they would wire up a cat with a microphone, a battery, and a transmitter? Like, it boggles the imagination, but it really happened. And so you never know what really is happening out there.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's become a smear campaign, right? So if you ask questions outside of the narrative, it's quite easy to just say, hey, that's a conspiracy theory. No actual serious person would ever ask those questions or make those assertions. I don't know, though. I think that's a way to shut down the free speech.
We'll talk about that in a bit, but let's go on to our next story here. What do you got for me?
Okay, I got you. Operation Mockingbird. So in the 50s, the United States, and working through the CIA, which is the Central Intelligence Agency, they were working with the media companies, with the large media companies, to basically influence the population. They were experimenting with what kind of stories they could fabricate and put out, what kind of opinion they could change or garner based on said story or lack of story. And they actually got leading American journalists into this network where they were all, and this is crazy, they were all working, insidiously together, dark rooms, smashing on typewriters, seeing what kind of stories they could push out to these mainstream media outlets. And at the time, this is the 50s, so it was all newspaper, all radio, and was it some TV at that point? I think it was probably some TV at that point.
Just to stop you there for a second, Anderson Cooper, who's an anchor on CNN, did intern for the CIA when he was in college. So that's something to think about as we continue on with this story.
And interestingly, in that vein, I've heard that he's got some deep connections to the CIA. So it wasn't just an intern; it was possibly an operative, kind of posing as an intern. it's conspiracy theory. Like there's no confirmation of that, but I've seen that passed around in some of the quote dark corners of the web, which is just another term they use to discount any questions being asked. So yeah, Anderson Cooper, it's still happening. So this is targeted. This is absolutely something that the press, working with the CIA, working with the government, they're creating stories. I mean, we're on Facebook right now, right? We're talking about Facebook. Yeah. So Todd says that all these things we're talking about are realities, and it's true. It's totally true.
Absolutely.
But the thing is that if we're not talking about it, then who the hell is talking about it? You follow? And that's why we're doing this, because we think these are...
If we're not talking about it, they're getting away with it.
Exactly right. Exactly. And that's why we're doing this. Yep. And then Richie says all the billionaires control society. And that's what we're getting at, right? Because it doesn't have to be that way. The people control everything. We just don't know it. Like, there needs to be a way to galvanize the people. And if we can't do it, then we're allowing it. Just like Frank said earlier, we're totally just allowing it to happen. So there you go. But yeah, this was an actual thing. And there have been previously classified documents that have come out since that verify all this stuff. Operation Mockingbird was a thing. The CIA working with the press, a huge stable of reporters trying to influence public opinion with how they wrote stories. I mean, I think anybody can look at CNN or Fox News, and if you can't sniff propaganda a mile away, then I guess you're not reading. You're not paying attention. I don't know. It's like they kind of expect a lot of us to be so busy with our lives that we don't call them out. We don't call the BS out. But there's a ton of BS. And here we go. Absolute proof. Operation Mockingbird. When we're done with this, we'll put links for all this stuff underneath the broadcast. But yeah, absolutely crazy. Todd says America has been dumbed down over the last 20 years. And I would argue longer than 20 years. I mean, this was 1950. So how long ago was that? I mean, dear Lord. Again, I can't count that high. But yeah, so if you look at some of the stuff now, some of the stuff going on with this past election, the coming election, and all of the Facebook stuff that they said or did or continues to happen, Facebook's taken a lot of heat, and I think rightly so. There's a lot of things that they've done or not done, as the case may be, and they've kind of allowed it to happen, because all they care about is their reach. They want to reach as many people as possible, and they don't care how. But there you go. Anything else on Operation Mockingbird there?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that even though they brought it to the public attention, even though we now know about it, it's still happening. It's still happening in plain sight, and no one's doing anything. Like, I'm absolutely certain. I thought I read the other day that maybe it was NBC, they hired an ex-CIA agent. Who's that guy? What's his name? Michael something.
Yes. I don't know the name. I did see that, though.
But in plain sight of the public, they're hiring ex-FBI agents, X in quotation marks, because I don't believe it, but they're hiring ex-FBI agents, ex-CIA agents, and giving them roles in broadcasting in plain sight, in front of all of us. So this kind of thing you're talking about, it's still going on. It's still going on right now, to this minute.
Yeah, exactly. So Todd, again, says America's been dumbed down over the last 20 years, and Richie says it comes down to money and power. Some things never change, eh? Hey, guys, you're still out there. Give us a call, 702-957-1037. I've pinned it in the chat. It'll ring through. We'll put you right on the air. You can talk to us live. So there's Operation Mockingbird. What else you got there, Frank?
Yeah, so we kind of alluded to this a minute ago, but we all think that conspiracies are crazy. We think that people who believe them are paranoid or they're insane in some way. Well, it's actually interesting. In 1967, the CIA wrote a dispatch in which they coined the term conspiracy theory. So they either invented this term in 1967 or they popularized it. And one of the reasons they did this, or so it's thought by several people, is that they wanted to discredit people looking into the JFK assassination. They wanted to label them conspiracy theorists so that no one would take their opinions seriously. They wouldn't have to answer the questions. So it's kind of like demoting people asking the wrong questions into second-class citizens. They don't have the right to that information. Only people asking the correct questions, only people listening to the media and believing everything they hear are allowed to ask questions. And as we just saw with Operation Northwoods, those questions that are getting asked are programmed by the people in control.
Operation Mockingbird. But yeah.
Oh, sorry, Operation Mockingbird. That's what I meant. Yeah. So
you're good.
This kind of stuff all leaches into one another. Like, you can't ask the right questions, and if you do want to ask a legitimate question, you're called a crazy conspiracy theorist. And so the CIA actually released a dispatch, and they recommended several courses of action to portray these people as insane or belittle their information. So they said, one of the things that in their talking points, they said, you should claim that it would be impossible for so many people to keep quiet about such a big issue. And we've seen that before. We've seen it with 9/11. Like, if there was a conspiracy, there's so many people involved, well, one of them would have said something. But reference back to the Caesar story we covered, 60 senators were involved. They all had to be involved. And so if one of them gave themselves up, everyone would give themselves up. So claiming that it's impossible for so many people to be involved, it just doesn't work. We've seen time and time again that many people are involved in these conspiracies and they can keep their mouths shut.
Absolutely. One more time. I'm going to keep begging for calls, guys. I'm going to keep it. We're live. We'll be live for a little bit longer. If you want to get on the program, 702-957-1037. You'll pop up on my call screen. I'll put you right through. We'll interrupt what we're doing if you guys want to get on the program.
Now, here's another thing the CIA did to discredit conspiracy theorists, is they actually had people in the CIA or friendly to the CIA attack claims of people. So if someone started asking questions about JFK, they would have someone with official status, official know-how, attack that person and say, you don't know what you're talking about. And again, so the same types of things we've been discussing. Again, they claim that eyewitness testimony is entirely unreliable. So if they did see someone on the grassy knoll, or if they did see a second shooter, well, it was eyewitness testimony. Don't ask questions. Don't get the answers.
Well,
they also, sorry, go ahead.
It's one of those tricks where people are easy because you can always smear somebody, right? You can always, if that guy saw a second shooter, you could always say, well, that guy drinks way too much tequila, or that guy got D's in school, or what have you. Like, people are easy to smear because you see it every day. There's a hit piece in the press every single day, just depending on what kind of agenda they want to push. But I think that's their best angle, is they instantly discredit a witness with an easy smear campaign. Even it's pretty easy.
Exactly, and that's the point, is having people friendly to the CIA attack the claims and claim they're unreliable in some way. So other things they did is they started claiming that it's irresponsible to speculate about things. And how ridiculous is that? That it's irresponsible to ask questions. It's irresponsible to want to be informed. It's insane. I can't believe that either.
Yeah.
They also accused theorists of being politically motivated, accused them of being wedded to their ideas, so completely infatuated, completely paranoid, completely obsessed, and also started claiming that they had financial interests in these ideas.
Right, absolutely. More comments by Todd here. He says 9/11 was a smokescreen used by Bush to go to Iraq. I think there's very few people that would argue there, at least after 9/11. And then another comment. Can you see these comments, Frank? Do you have a page up where you can read them?
I don't have it up right now. I'll get it up right now.
No, don't worry about it. I got it. I'll read them. No problem. So Todd again says, I believe JFK was assassinated because he was trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve banks because he knew they were taking over everything. Yeah. So it goes to show you push up against the establishment and the establishment will push back one way or the other. I think we're seeing in modern times quite a few examples of that. So one more time, give us a call, guys. 702-957-1037. We'll get you right on the show.
I just wanted to mention, to cap that off, that the CIA has successfully made the term conspiracy theory a pejorative. It's associated with bad things. It's associated with people who are paranoid. And it shouldn't be that way, because as we saw, there have been conspiracies all throughout history, in recent history and far, far back into the past.
Absolutely. And it's a literally a way to shut down free speech, right? You easily discount and just a conspiracy theory. No serious person would ever consider that.
If you don't stand up for yourself, if you allow yourself to be bullied into silence, then they get what they want.
Absolutely right. All right. Next conspiracy.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So I got this one. I saved this one for last because this was crazy. I had never heard of this one. We were doing some digging for the show here, and there's something called Operation Northwoods. Now, this was during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and funny, we keep talking about JFK in the chat here, and some parallels with Caesar, etc. But here's some really dirty stuff that was going on during that time. Clearly, Cuba was kind of a powder keg happening between Russia and the United States, and Cuba at the time, in and of itself, was a not very military. They had a weak economy and a weak military, and we could have stomped them. But the problem was Russia was backing them up. So if we went and stomped them, we had Big Daddy Russia to deal with, and then we had major problems. So that was part of what was happening. And so as an idea on how to get out of this, from the United States government's perspective, it was easy to just say, if Cuba wasn't there, we would be in much better shape, because they're off the coast of Florida. We put missiles there. They can hit us before we can know what the heck's going on. It gives Russia actually a first strike opportunity against us, who has better technology, but if they've got a better geological distance to hit us, then technology might not matter depending on how hard they hit us. So anyway, if Cuba wasn't there, life would be much easier. And so what the CIA did is they got together and they came up with Operation Northwoods. And it was actually a series of false flag proposals. Now, we're talking actual terrorist stuff, like blowing up people, like American citizens, and false flag.
Sounds familiar.
Things. Yeah, right? Like literally, we're going to set off a bunch of bombs in the street type of thing. We're going to have like a sniper just shooting people. And what we'll do is we'll put our guy in there to do all this stuff. And then we'll have fake evidence to frame another innocent American, but it'll frame them in such a way that they were an agent working for Cuba. And so at that point, they would actually be able to attack Cuba with the public support, like all false flags. And like I couldn't believe it reading this. And it was like, this stuff has actually been declassified. Like, this has actually come out that the CIA literally put these documents together as, this is our plan. It's a false flag. We're going to get the support of the American people by murdering American people. How insane is that? The good news here.
It sounds like what happened to the Twin Towers in 9/11, right? They murder those people. They get embroiled in the Iraq War. They find these weapons of mass destruction that don't exist, and they're given free reign to do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's what Todd was saying. Exactly. And so the thing is, right, when people say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, and try and write it off just like that, I don't know. You go back and this isn't literally insidious. Like they were going to just murder innocent people to get rid of a problem that, you know, in and of them itself, they kind of caused, you know. Really unbelievable. But luckily, so this proposal, again, Operation Northwoods, we'll link this again so you can look it up if you haven't heard of it. It actually came from the CIA and went to the president's desk. And luckily, for whatever reason, JFK at the time turned it down and said, no, we're not doing that. But I think just the proposal in and of itself is downright frightening, because you can kind of glean what type of stuff that they're willing to do, you know. If it gets worse than that, I don't even know. I mean,
so wait a minute. You're saying that if he had signed this, these things would have started killing Americans and blaming it on the Soviet Union.
Yes, and Cuba specifically. Yes, and
that's insane.
They even had
can't
targets.
believe that.
They had targets picked out. So they had, because of the, you know, Cuba is close to Florida, they had all targets all over Florida picked out so they could easily point to Cuba. They had targets in Washington, D.C. targeted, picked out, ready to go. Yeah, fake evidence ready to go, like exactly how they were going to frame the people. Unbelievable. Yeah, so there you go. Like, I'm not exactly
So it
sure.
seems like they'll do anything to drum up support for a war. Like, I don't know if you've seen the news lately, but Bashir al-Assad gassing his own people in Syria would be this kind of the same thing. Like, he's kicking the rebels out of Syria. He's reconquering all those lost provinces. And now all of a sudden he decides to use chemical weapons. Look what happened last time he used chemical weapons. Trump launched. And now what are they going to do? It's quite terrifying, actually. And I hope it's not the same kind of thing, but it might just be.
There's another one, that Russian nerve agent that was used on those the two spot, or the double agent and his daughter in the United Kingdom. There's another one. So, like,
did you notice the timing of that? Actually, what big event happened immediately afterwards? Do you know?
It all happened so fast.
It was Vladimir Putin's re-election.
Oh yes,
happened after that. So we're not saying anything. We don't support Russia. We're Americans, but that's quite a coincidence, right? He attacks with a deadly nerve agent. It's prescribed by the UN, and then immediately after, I can't believe that either.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's the type of thing, like, I was talking to somebody, obviously off the show, about this, and we were saying that if you were Russia, think about it this way: if you wanted to off those people, if you really wanted to and not have it traced, why wouldn't you just pay some street thug $1,000 and give him his shaved off serial revolver, and there you go, done. Like, literally untraceable. And you know, I think we got some parallels there, actually. Back to your Seth Rich bit. Again, we're not talking about Seth Rich, but you know, like, there's a lot easier ways to perpetrate these types of assassinations that don't have a Russian signature to them. So it seems a little silly that Russia would be in such a big hurry to do it in a way that was obviously, or, you know, quote obviously them. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, classic false flag type of scenario.
It does seem like these events are designed to generate political rhetoric, and then these people can stand up in Congress and in the Senate and beg for war, basically. Like, they do something so terrible, and then they have a blank ticket to go to war with whoever they want by convincing the people that these things really happened.
There you go. I don't really Twitter much, but little funny aside, I was tweeting the other day about a Washington Post article when they were complaining about some local news network released some script about fake news, and so, you know, dozens or hundreds of them. Anyway, most of us have seen it, but the Washington Post was calling them out for basically calling out fake news, right? So it's like the pot kettle black type of situation. And so I just made a comment on Twitter: "Oh, good job, Washington Post, pot calling the kettle black, you know, propaganda, blah, blah, blah." And like, I immediately had people jump all over me and say that I was a Russian bot because I had no followers on my Twitter account. Like what? I log into Twitter twice a year, and I should have a lot of followers or something. I don't know, but interesting that immediately the comment was I was a Russian bot because I had no followers. Like clearly, like they wouldn't. Think about it this way: if Russia was going to have bots, don't you think they would make sure that those Twitter accounts had some followers? Like that type of thing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
You know what this reminds me of, actually, is the Red Scare and the fears during the Cold War. Like for spies left and right. People didn't trust their neighbors. They thought they could be Russian spies. And now it's on Twitter. You could be a Russian bot. Oh no, what if you're a Russian bot?
Right,
It's getting crazy.
That is insane. And yeah, I mean, yeah. So I guess technically I've been termed a hashtag Russian bot. So congratulations me, I guess. But yeah, so Operation Northwoods, back to that. False flags, man. Like it shows you what level governments are willing to go to. And you figure, if you look at it this way, that if they're going to war, they're going to kill people. So the way they see it is, well, we'll just kill a few more people, right? And it's a quick setup, and bam, go to war. Luckily, JFK had the sack to tell him no, but there you go. One more time, guys. Todd, I know you're there. Give us a call, buddy. 702-957-1037. We're going to be on for just a little bit longer. I think that's the end of our conspiracies. Do you have any more there?
No, I think that was a good introduction, though. We've talked about how these things have been happening for the longest time, how they'll do outrage American citizens, how they can be insane, like putting microphones in the ears of cats, and how the CIA has actively demonized people who try to think outside the box. And as you just said, try to think outside the box on Twitter nowadays, and you're a Russian bot.
Yeah. It's think about how you don't even have to argue anymore. It's just a bam, ad hominem, built-in Russian bot. Get out of here. Like completely dismiss the actual thought. You know, unbelievable. Todd got a couple more comments here. Todd says the problem with today's society is people would rather believe the sweet lies over the harsh truth. And ain't that the truth?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's true. It's easier to believe that everything's copacetic. It's easier just to go along with your daily lives. But, you know, we formed this country in a conspiracy, right? Fighting against the British. We made it better because we stepped out. We denied what was happening. And if we want to keep making it better, we have to keep asking questions, and we have to put these people who are doing these things to the question. We have to make them responsible for them.
Absolutely. Hey Todd, I'm it's okay, man. He says maybe next show, if there is something I feel stronger about, I'll call in. Yeah, no problem. We appreciate you sticking through. It means a lot. If we're sitting here talking to ourselves, it makes it quite a bit harder to do the show. But so what we're looking for is participation. We're looking for anybody. We're going to leave the broadcast up. We're going to put on SoundCloud. I'll put all the links right underneath so you can find everything easily. But what we're looking for is, what do we want the next show to be about? Do we want more conspiracy? Do we want aliens? What kind of stuff do we want? And that's kind of what we're looking at, because we have our ideas, but our ideas without your ideas are less than, if you catch my meaning. It's important that you guys participate.
I think we're going to go deep on this too. Like, we introduced conspiracies here, but let's talk about domes on the moon. Let's talk about ancient alien spacecraft orbiting Saturn. Let's talk about UFOs. Let's talk about Bigfoot, and let's ask questions about these things and contact people who might know things and get some real answers.
Absolutely. So there we go. We're one more time, we're going to link everything. We'll archive this stuff on YouTube. We'll have a YouTube channel up. Like I said, we're just getting going. This is show number 1, and we hope you guys like it. We appreciate any kind of feedback you give us, good or bad. If it's bad and we need to do something better, we'll do it. That's the thing. So again, if you guys aren't listening, we're just talking to ourselves, and we can do that in a room all by ourselves. So yeah, there we go. So Richie says talk about aliens. There we go. We can do. Let's put that on the docket there. Let's make next show about aliens.
So we're going to have quite a few shows about aliens, not just one.
Of course. And then Todd says, yeah, I'll call in if it's about the moon. There we go. So maybe we got aliens in the moon. So we'll work those in somehow into the next one. But yeah, one more time. This is Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange. My co-host right here. Go ahead.
Frank Pierce.
Frank Pierce. And yeah. So hopefully we'll be doing this a lot. But without your feedback, a lot doesn't happen. So we'll stay on for another 30 seconds, minute, if somebody wants to give us a quick call. We've got 702-957-1037. And if not, we're about to sign out. Todd says you should start a Facebook group. We actually have a page. Look up Troubled Minds Radio. Just type that into Facebook, and there's a brand new page that we just made, and we'll actually be broadcasting there. So, yeah, what we can do is start a group over there. So we're using this because this has been an active page that we have been admins at this page. So a lot of the stuff that goes up here, we are involved. So we're not just some randoms coming up onto the page. But yeah, so that's what this is about. All right, counting down. No calls, that's cool. Once again, Todd, Richie, we appreciate you guys sticking in chat, listening to the whole show. Got some feedback here too. Todd says, good show, guys. Richie says, yes, do more shows.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, that does mean a lot. Time number one, it's good to hear good stuff. Okay, so anything else there, Frank?
Yeah, I just want to say that conspiracies are real. Like, don't think you're an idiot or don't think you're paranoid for reading about them. They happen all the time. And we have to keep that in mind as we look at UFOs, as we look at Bigfoot, as we look at everything. So they're real, they're out there, we have to pay attention.
Absolutely. One more comment from Todd. Todd says, yeah, but if you start a group, you will get more members to listen to the show. And that's true. So we're going to do it up, guys. We're going to do it up. We're going to have SoundCloud. We're going to have Facebook. We're going to have YouTube. It's all coming. All that stuff is coming. We'll have a Facebook group, the whole deal. We'll be active on Twitter, you name it. So all that stuff's coming. We're just kind of throwing out the feelers to see if we have interest. And if we have interest, we're going to go full bore with this because this was a lot of fun. All right. No calls? All right. Once again, thanks, Todd. Thanks, Richie. We appreciate you listening and hope to catch you next time. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. For Mike and Frank, over and out.